Milch was half Jewish, but he was given a major role in military aircraft development nonetheless. To remove any stigma of the last war's defeat, Germany's Air Force took on a new name, the Luftwaffe. But in rebuilding, its designers looked to the past. A starting point was the Pfalz D-12 biplane fighter, one of the first to feature an all-metal fuselage. Before long, modernized biplane fighters filled the skies of the new Reich. Among those that symbolized the new Luftwaffe was Heinkel's HE-61. But by 1934, it too was outdated, and the search began for an even more modern fighter. One early candidate was the Arado 80, a streamlined monoplane. With an open cockpit, it was built with a fixed undercarriage, although originally planned with retractable gear. Its disadvantage was excessive weight, and it never went into production. Another contender was Focke-Wulf's 159, built with a retractable undercarriage and an enclosed cockpit. Its major feature was a parasol wing that made it more maneuverable. But this too was declined because the wing made crash landings more dangerous and reduced speed. The leading candidate for the contract was the Heinkel 112. It had a retractable undercarriage and open cockpit, but the Heinkel company fighter was basically too heavy. Moreover, its wing was both complicated and exorbitantly expensive. Over time, Heinkel tried to improve the 112 with a lighter version, and also built the Model 110, which was lighter still. In the end, none of these planes got the bid. Instead, the contract went to a rank outsider, an aircraft which had been all but excluded from the competition.
We will return in a moment.
Because of Messerschmitt's feud with Field Marshal Milch, his company had been virtually blackballed from military projects. Even so, with quiet confidence, they'd built a single-engined light aircraft known as the Messerschmitt 108 Typhoon. With retractable landing gear, the basic layout of the 108 was clean and simple. It boasted advanced features that made it an extraordinary performer. The cockpit was roomy and fairly comfortable for the planes of the day. To prove the strength of his design, Willy Messerschmitt entered the 108 in the Around Europe race. And though it didn't come in first, its overall performance made it a real winner. Onlookers were so impressed with the plane that Milch was hard-pressed to justify his bias against Messerschmitt. In the end, Messerschmitt was allowed to submit a design for the new fighter. But a vindictive Milch made it painfully clear that even if the company won, somebody else would build the plane. Undaunted, Willy Messerschmitt accepted the challenge. Messerschmitt immediately set about refining the 108 to streamline it even more. The emphasis was on speed, because unless his new design was far superior to the Heinkel, it was certain that Milch would tip the scales against him. The resulting Messerschmitt aircraft would become an aviation legend. Labeled the 109, it was a sleek-looking monoplane with an enclosed cockpit and retractable landing gear. Moreover, it was a much easier machine to build than the complicated 112. Just as important to Messerschmitt's victory was the fact that in 1936, German intelligence learned of a British fighter with similar specifications, the Spitfire. Messerschmitt's 109 was packed with features. It was a plane that would fly to immortality in the Battle of Britain. With its narrow undercarriage, the impact of landing was borne by the fuselage and not by the wing. Its sting was indeed vicious, A cannon mounted on top of the engine that fired through the propeller hub made the 109 deadly accurate. The wings were light and could be taken off quickly. When laid alongside the fuselage, the aircraft took up a remarkably small amount of space, making it ideal for transportation by road or rail. The fuselage was menacing and lean, and the canopy small and restrictive. But in the late 1930s, the 109 was an aerodynamic marvel. And because it was so inexpensive to build, large numbers could be manufactured. The E and F models, and later the G, were the classic versions and took up the bulk of the production run. The 109E model, or Emile as German flyers called her, first went into battle in the Spanish Civil War. Called the Condor Legion, some 6,000 Luftwaffe airmen aided Franco's nationalists and gained vital experience there that would serve them well in the years to come. In Spain, a new generation of Luftwaffe fighter pilots was blooded. But even though the 109 showed formidable combat prowess, the machine still had shortcomings. Third-ranking fighter ace of all time, explains.
The 109 was a very sensitive aircraft with a very tiny cockpit and with a very short stick, and with the problems were with a high and narrow strut undercarriage, which caused for a newcomer sometimes some problems when he had once the throttle for takeoff and push the stick forward to get the tail up, then you had to get opposite rudder immediately to counter the torque effect. The one thing in action was, you had to get used to it, you know, we had these slots in the 109, particularly against the Spitfire. When we came in a tough fighting and turning the aircraft at a high speed, with high speed load on then the wings came out just by gravity, caused stalling and slapping the wing, which was a disadvantage. You know, we had this framed cockpit, and furthermore, we had behind your head steel plate to protect your head. You protected your head, but you took off your vision to the back, you know? So we put in the cockpit at the early days a mirror. But you know, just due to the vibration of the airplane, you couldn't find anything in the mirror. And if you saw somebody in the mirror, it was about the time to bail out, you know, it was right behind you.
Although the Messerschmitt 109 had an advanced aerodynamically efficient airframe, like all proven fighters, the key to its success was its engine. And for many 109s, it was the Daimler-Benz 600. Even today, it's possible to see one of these unique power plants, thanks to the hard work of the Messerschmitt restoration team at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford. Restoration team member Ian Mason explains.
The engine you can see here is a Daimler-Benz DB605A engine from the Messerschmitt Bf109G. The engine itself is fairly conventional in layout, straightforward V12, except that it's inverted. If you're used to things like Merlin engines or Allison engines or anything of that sort, they nearly all tend to be an upright V with the carburetor in the center here. Now, the Germans turned that upside down and replaced the carburetor with a fuel injection unit, which gives you a much speedier response on the engine. When you hit the throttle, you get an almost immediate response. And also, you don't have any negative G problems, which is very important, Battle of Britain time.
Even by today's engineering standards, the Daimler-Benz engine was magnificent, as the team found when they had it inspected by Rolls-Royce.
So they took it down to their shop and measured it and found it was right bang in the middle of these very tight tolerances. And their words to us were, for God's sake, don't damage the crankshaft because we couldn't make another